What would you do if the family you sacrificed everything for stole your future right under your nose? Emma Walsh thought she was the rock holding her family together until a crumpled document revealed a $500,000 trust fund for her sister, built on the ashes of Emma's own dreams. In a single night, her savings vanished, her mother's life hung by a thread, and a ring that meant everything became a weapon against her. Shocking secrets unravel in Family Isn't Everything. Hit subscribe now and help us reach our first 1,000 supporters to uncover the truth together. What would you do if the family you sacrificed everything for stole your future right under your nose? Emma Walsh thought she was the rock holding her family together until a crumpled document revealed a $500,000 trust fund for her sister, built on the ashes of Emma's own dreams. In a single night, her savings vanished, her mother's life hung by a thread, and a ring that meant everything became a weapon against her. Shocking secrets unravel in Family Isn't Everything. Hit subscribe now and help us reach our first 1,000 supporters to uncover the truth together. Emma Walsh leaned back in the creaky wooden chair at the Bear Lake vacation home, the scent of pine and dust filling her lungs. At 33, she'd built a life most people only dreamed of. A self-taught stock trader in Salt Lake City, pulling in six figures through sleepless nights and razor-sharp instincts. But here, in this rustic cabin her family cherished, she wasn't Emma the success story. She was Emma the dutiful daughter, the one who'd quietly paid $43,500 in property taxes over 5 years, $11,680 for her sister Ava's sleek little Honda, $12,000 for a new roof last summer, and $8,200 for her mother Linda's knee surgery when insurance fell short. All told, she'd poured $118,745 into the Walsh family without a single complaint. Until tonight. It was supposed to be a casual Sunday dinner. The fireplace crackled, casting flickering shadows across the worn plaid sofa where Linda sat knitting, her frail hands trembling slightly. Ava, 31 and still finding her path, scrolled through her phone, her manicured nails glinting under the lamplight. Mike Walsh, their father, paced the room, his broad shoulders tense as he muttered about rising HOA fees. Emma had just handed him the latest property tax bill. $8,700 due next month. When she noticed it, a corner of paper peeking out from under a fishing magazine on the coffee table. The bold letters, Trust Fund, and Ava Walsh caught her eye like a slap in the face. Dad, what's this? Emma's voice was steady, but her hand shook as she reached for the envelope. Mike lunged, his face reddening. That's private, Emma. Put it down. Too late. She'd already pulled it free, her hazel eyes scanning the cold legal print, a trust fund for Ava. Established 5 years ago, starting at $350,000 with provisions for more. Emma's stomach dropped like a stone in the lake outside. This was the same father who'd told her there wasn't enough money to help with college tuition, forcing her to juggle 2 jobs and a bus pass while Ava got dance lessons and a private university. The same father who'd shrugged when her beat-up Honda broke down, saying, "We're stretched thin, kid." "How could you be so selfish?" Mike bellowed, snatching the document back. "Ava needs that money for her future. You've got more than enough." Emma stood frozen, the tax bill crumpled in her fist. Selfish? She'd spent years believing she was giving back to the family that raised her. Sleepless nights trading stock so Linda could walk again, so Ava could drive to her business meetings, so this creaky old house could stay in the family. And all the while, they'd been building a fortune for Ava behind her back. Linda wouldn't meet her eyes, her knitting needles clicking faster. Ava smirked faintly, then looked away. The room felt like it was closing in, the air thick with betrayal. Emma drove home that night, the snow-capped Wasatch Mountains looming accusingly against the darkening sky. Her downtown apartment was silent when she arrived, the glow of her laptop the only light as she sank onto the couch. Her phone buzzed. Mike, no doubt checking she'd still pay that tax bill. She ignored it. Then a second call came, the number blocked. Her finger hovered over decline, but curiosity won. "Hello?" she said, her voice raw. A shaky whisper answered, "Check your old savings account, Emma. I can't say more." Click. The line went dead. Heart pounding, she opened her banking app and dug into an account she hadn't touched since college. A relic from her days slinging coffee and tutoring kids to pay off student loans. She'd saved $25,000 by graduation, a proud little nest egg she'd planned to use for a down payment on her first place. But the balance stared back at her now. $0. Her breath hitched as she scrolled through the history. Small withdrawals over a decade, totaling exactly $25,000, transferred to an unfamiliar account labeled Family Fund. She called the bank, her voice trembling. "Who authorized this?" The clerk's reply was a punch to the gut. "Michael Walsh, ma'am. He was a co-signer from when you opened it at 18. Emma's vision blurred with tears. That money wasn't just cash. It was her 3 a.m. shifts, her skipped meals, her dreams of stability, while Ava got a car for her 16th birthday and Mike preached tough love to Emma. She dialed his number, the line ringing in the silence. "Dad," she choked out when he answered, "how could you take my savings? My money." Mike's tone was ice cold, unapologetic. "It was for the family, Emma. You don't get it, do you? Ava needed a safety net. You were always fine on your own." The call ended with a click, but the words echoed like a gunshot. Fine on her own? She'd clawed her way up while they'd stripped her bare. First her past, now her present. Emma slammed her laptop shut, resolve hardening in her chest. She wasn't fine anymore, and they wouldn't be either. The next morning, she called Daniel Lopez, a forensic accountant recommended by her financial advisor, Jim Carter. "I need every penny I've given them documented," she said, her voice steel. "And I want that $25,000 tracked down." Daniel's calm reply steadied her. "Give me a week. We'll get the truth." As she hung up, Emma stared out her window at the city lights twinkling below. The family she'd bled for had built Ava's future on the ashes of hers. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a reckoning. She'd spent years being their rock. Now, she'd be their storm. Emma Walsh stared at the letter, trembling in her hands, the stark black ink from First Utah Bank searing into her mind. Notice of foreclosure, Bear Lake property, taxes and penalties totaling $15,000 due in 72 hours, or the property will be seized. It had been 1 week since she'd uncovered the trust fund for her sister Ava and the theft of her $25,000 college savings by her father, Michael Walsh. 1 week since she'd vowed to stop being the family's silent ATM. $118,745, drained over 5 years for their vacations, Ava's car, her mother Linda's surgery, and that damned lake house. Now, the clock was ticking, and the Walsh family wasn't letting her walk away quietly. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, Mike's name flashing like a warning siren. She hesitated, then answered. "Emma?" His voice growled through the speaker. "You see what you've done? If you don't pay this tax bill, we're losing Bear Lake. You want to destroy every memory we've ever made there?" The accusation hit her like a freight train. Memories, summers splashing in the lake, roasting marshmallows by the fire, her grandmother Eleanor's soft laugh as she'd slip that heirloom wedding ring onto Emma's tiny finger, saying, "One day, this'll be yours." But those memories felt tainted now, overshadowed by the lies she'd uncovered. "I'm not paying, Dad," she said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "You've got Ava's trust fund, $350,000, right? Use that." Mike scoffed, his tone dripping with disdain. "That's Ava's future, not some piggy bank for your tantrum. You've always been the strong one, Emma. Don't fail us now." The line went dead, leaving her staring at the phone, anger simmering beneath her skin. Strong on? She had been strong when she worked 30 hours a week at a coffee shop to afford college, strong when she traded stocks until dawn to keep this family afloat. And they'd repaid her with betrayal. Before she could catch her breath, another call came, her mother, Linda. Emma's chest tightened. Linda's voice was frail, barely above a whisper. Emma, honey, I saw the letter. My heart can't take this stress. I've been having pains again. Please, just pay it. You've always been so reliable. The words sliced through her. Linda's heart condition wasn't news. Emma had forked over $8,200 for her knee surgery 2 years ago, watching her mother limp back to health while Mike claimed insurance couldn't cover it. Was this real or another manipulation? Mom, I can't keep doing this, Emma said, her voice cracking. They've got the money. Why am I always the one bleeding for this family? Linda's silence was deafening, followed by a soft sob before she hung up. Emma sank onto her couch, the foreclosure notice crumpled in her fist. 48 hours left. Her mind raced. Could she let the house go, knowing it might kill her mother? Then her intercom buzzed, sharp and insistent. Miss Walsh, it's your sister, the security guard's voice crackled. She's pretty upset. Emma sighed and buzzed Ava in. Moments later, Ava stormed through the door, her blonde hair wild, eyes red-rimmed. What the hell, Emma? She snapped, slamming her purse on the counter. Dad says if we lose the house, he's selling Grandma Ellie's ring to cover the debt. That's on you. Emma froze. Eleanor's ring, the gold band with a tiny sapphire worn smooth by decades of love. It wasn't just jewelry, it was the last piece of her grandmother, the woman who'd taught her to fish on that very lake, who'd whispered, "You're tougher than they know, Em." Ava kept going, her voice rising. You're so selfish. That ring means everything to us, and you're letting it slip away because you're mad about some stupid trust fund. Emma's jaw clenched. Stupid trust fund? Ava, it's $350,000. Money I never saw a dime of while I paid for your car, your trips, this house. And now you're guilting me with Grandma's ring? Ava's face flushed, but she didn't back down. I need that trust fund. I don't have your fancy trading career. Dad says you're just jealous because I'm finally getting ahead. Emma laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. Ahead? I've been carrying you all for years, Ava, and Dad's been stealing from me. Did he tell you about the $25,000 he took from my savings? Ava blinked, caught off guard, then shook her head. You're lying, he wouldn't. But the flicker of doubt in her eyes told Emma otherwise. Believe what you want, Emma said, turning away. But I'm done being your bank. Tell Dad to use your trust fund, or sell the ring. I don't care anymore. Ava grabbed her purse and stormed out, leaving the door slamming in her wake. Emma stood there, the silence ringing in her ears until her phone pinged with a text from Daniel Lopez. Found something big. Call me. She dialed him immediately, her pulse racing. Emma, Daniel's voice was grim. I've tracked those $25,000 withdrawals. They went straight into Ava's trust fund. Every cent. And I've got your contribution records ready. $118,745 over 5 years, plus lost investment interest. Total damage? $150,000. You've got a case here, if you want to fight, Emma's breath caught. $150,000. She'd given them a fortune, and they'd still taken more. Thanks, Dan, she said. Get it notarized. I'm not letting this go. She hung up and stared at the foreclosure notice. 48 hours left. Linda's frail voice echoed in her mind. My heart can't take this. And Ava's accusation about the ring stung like salt in a wound. But then she thought of Daniel's words, of the $25,000 stolen from her past, of the trust fund bloating Ava's future while Emma scraped by. Something snapped inside her. She wasn't the villain here. They were. Emma grabbed her keys and headed out into the crisp Salt Lake night. She'd meet Daniel tomorrow, armed with the truth. The house might fall, the ring might be sold, but she wouldn't break. Not this time. As she drove, the mountains loomed dark and silent, witnesses to a storm that was only beginning. Emma Walsh gripped the steering wheel, the Salt Lake City skyline blurring past as she sped toward Daniel Lopez's office. The foreclosure clock on the Bear Lake house ticked down, less than 48 hours left, and her family's pleas still rang in her ears. Her mother Linda's frail, "My heart can't take this," Her sister Ava's shrill, "You're letting Grandma's ring go!" But Emma wasn't bending. Not after learning her father, Michael Walsh, had stolen $25,000 from her college savings to pad Ava's $350,000 trust fund. Not after pouring $118,745 into their lives while they called her selfish. She'd told Mike to use Ava's fund or sell Eleanor's ring. His silence had been her answer. Now, she was ready to fight back. Daniel met her at his cluttered downtown office, stacks of papers teetering on his desk. "Emma," he said, sliding a thick folder toward her, "this is bigger than we thought. That trust fund? It's not $350,000 anymore, it's $500,000. Mike's been investing it secretly, and some of those returns trace back to your $25,000. Emma's jaw dropped, her fingers tightening around the folder. $500,000. Her family wasn't just comfortable, they were rich. Richer than she'd ever be after years of scraping by. "He turned my money into her fortune," she whispered, fury bubbling up. "And he's still demanding more?" Daniel nodded grimly. "Your total contribution, $118,745 over 5 years, plus the stolen $25,000, plus lost investment interest, comes to $150,000. I've got bank statements, transfer receipts, everything notarized. You could sue, Emma. This is fraud." Sue her own father? The thought made her stomach churn, but so did the image of Mike's smug face, yelling, "You've got more than enough," while he siphoned her past and present. "I need to think," she said, clutching the folder. "But keep digging, Dan. I want every dirty secret he's hiding." She barely made it home before her phone lit up with a text from her cousin Ethan Brooks. "Emergency family meeting tomorrow at Bear Lake. Mike's rallying everyone against you, says you're abandoning them. Watch out." Emma's pulse raced. A family meeting? She hadn't seen Ethan or her uncle Rob Walsh in months, let alone Aunt Sarah Mitchell. Mike was playing dirty, spinning a tale to turn the extended family into his army. Another text followed, this one from Sarah. "Emma, how could you do this to your dad? He's struggling." Struggling? With a $500,000 trust fund in his pocket? She tossed the phone aside, rage and dread twisting inside her. The next morning, a courier delivered a bombshell, a legal summons. Mike wasn't just rallying family, he was suing her. The document claimed her $118,745 in payments were voluntary gifts, citing a text she'd sent years ago, "I just want to help the family." He demanded $50,000 in damages for financial and emotional distress caused by her refusal to pay the Bear Lake taxes. A handwritten note was stapled to the page. "You've gone too far, Emma. I'll take this to the papers if I have to. Salt Lake won't forget the traitor who abandoned her own blood." Her hands shook as she read it. He was threatening to smear her name, to ruin the career she built from nothing. Emma called Daniel immediately. "He's suing me, Dan. Can he win this?" Daniel's voice was tense. "It's shaky. There's no contract, and that text is vague. But he's got a lawyer spinning it as a family obligation. If he goes public, it's your word against his." Public. The word echoed. She'd spent years earning respect in the trading world. Clients, colleagues, late-night forums where she shared tips. One headline, "Trader betrays family. Could tank it all." She hung up and paced her apartment, the mountains outside her window now a jagged wall closing in. Her phone buzzed again. "Ethan," she answered, breathless. "Emma," he said, his voice low. "I overheard Dad talking to Mike. They're planning the meeting to guilt you into paying, not just the taxes, but the penalties and legal fees too. Mike's telling everyone you're jealous of Ava, that you've got millions stashed away. It's bullshit, but Aunt Sarah's buying it." Emma's throat tightened. Millions? She'd clawed her way to a decent portfolio, maybe $300,000 after taxes, but every spare dime had gone to them. "Thanks, Ethan," she said. "I'm coming to that meeting. They won't bury me without a fight." She spent the night preparing, Daniel's folder spread across her dining table like a battlefield map. Bank statements glowed under her laptop screen. $43,500 in tax payments, $11,680 for Ava's car, $12,000 for the roof, $8,200 for Linda's surgery, and that gut punch $25,000 from her savings. She found an old photo tucked in a drawer, her and Grandma Ellie by the lake, the sapphire ring glinting on Ellie's finger. "You're tougher than they know, Em," Ellie had said. Emma traced the image, tears welling up. "I hope you'd be proud, Grandma," she whispered, "because I'm about to burn it all down." The rumors hit by morning. A cousin she hadn't spoken to in years posted on Facebook. "Heard Emma's letting the lake house go to spite Uncle Mike. Some people can't handle families sticking together." Sarah called, her voice sharp. "Your dad says you're sitting on a fortune while he's losing everything. Is that true, Emma?" Emma snapped back. "Ask him about Ava's $500,000 trust fund, Aunt Sarah. Ask him where my savings went." Sarah hung up, stunned. The lies were spreading, and Mike was winning. Emma packed the folder into her briefcase, her resolve hardening. The meeting was tomorrow, 24 hours until foreclosure, and Mike was turning it into an ambush. But she had the truth, notarized and undeniable. She'd walk into that house, face the family she'd bled for, and let the chips fall. As she locked her door, her phone pinged with a final text from Mike. "You'll regret this, Emma." She didn't reply. The storm was coming and she'd be the lightning. Emma Walsh pulled into the gravel driveway of the Bear Lake vacation home, her briefcase heavy with Daniel Lopez's notarized folder, proof of the $150,000 she'd lost to her family's greed. The clock read 2 p.m. 24 hours remained before the bank seized the property, and her father, Michael Walsh, had called this emergency family meeting to bury her. She had uncovered his theft of her $25,000 savings, his secret inflation of Ava's trust fund to $500,000, and now his lawsuit claiming her $118,745 in contributions were gifts. Mike's threat to smear her name in the Salt Lake papers loomed like a guillotine, but Emma wasn't here to surrender. She was here to strike back. The living room buzzed with tension as she stepped inside. Mike stood by the fireplace, his broad frame silhouetted against the flames, mid-speech. "Emma's abandoning us when we need her most, letting this house go over some petty grudge." Ava sat on the plaid sofa, arms crossed, her blonde hair pulled tight. Linda fidgeted beside her, knitting needles idle in her lap, her pale face etched with worry. Uncle Rob Walsh, Aunt Sarah Mitchell, and Cousin Ethan Brooks lined the room, their expressions a mix of confusion and accusation. Emma set her briefcase on the coffee table with a deliberate thud, cutting Mike off. "Petty grudge," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "Let's talk about that." She opened the briefcase, pulling out the stack of documents, bank statements, receipts, transfer records, and slammed them down. 5 years, $118,745, she began, her hazel eyes blazing. "Taxes for this house, $43,500. Ava's car, $11,680. The roof, $12,000. Mom's surgery, $8,200. And that's not all. $25,000 stolen from my college savings, funneled into Ava's trust fund, which, by the way, isn't $350,000 anymore. It's $500,000. The room erupted in gasps. Rob's jaw dropped. Sarah clutched her purse. Ava's face paled, her mouth opening then closing. Mike's fists clenched, his face clenched crimson. "Those are lies," he roared. "Private family matters you've got no right to air." "Lies?" Emma shot back, tossing a bank statement at his feet. "There's your signature, Dad, on every withdrawal from my account. You told me we were broke while you built Ava a fortune on my dime." Linda's hands flew to her mouth, tears spilling over. "Mike, is this true?" she whispered. "Did you take her money?" Mike ignored her, advancing on Emma. "You've always been jealous of Ava. You've got millions stashed away. Don't play the victim." Emma laughed, sharp and bitter. "Millions? I've got $300,000 after years of grinding. Most of it gone to you. Look at the numbers, Dad. You're the thief here. Rob stood, his voice cutting through the chaos. What kind of father steals from his own kid, Mike? And $500,000 for Ava while Emma's bussing tables in college? Sarah nodded, her earlier doubt shifting. You said you were struggling, Mike. This doesn't add up. Ava shrank into the sofa, whispering, Emma, is this real? Emma met her sister's eyes, her voice softening but resolute. Every penny, Ava. I paid for your life while Dad told me I didn't need help. The room split, murmurs of shock from Rob and Ethan, a stunned silence from Sarah, and Mike's glare burning into her. Then it happened. Linda gasped, clutching her chest, her knitting tumbling to the floor. Mike! Emma! She rasped, her frail body crumpling. Emma lunged forward, catching her mother as she fell. Mom! Oh God, no! Someone call 911! Her hands shook as she cradled Linda's head, tears streaming down her face. Linda's eyes fluttered, her breath shallow. I didn't know. I'm sorry, honey, she wheezed. Ava sobbed, fumbling for her phone while Ethan dialed emergency services. Mike stood frozen, his face a mask of panic and guilt. Emma's voice broke as she held Linda tight. Mom, stay with me, please. This isn't your fault, she glared up at Mike, fury and grief colliding. If she dies, it's on you, Dad. You did this with your lies, your greed. Mike stumbled back, the fireplace casting jagged shadows across his stunned expression. I didn't mean, he stammered, but the words drowned in Ava's wails and the distant wail of sirens. Paramedics burst in minutes later, prying Linda from Emma's arms. Possible heart attack, one barked, strapping an oxygen mask over Linda's ashen face. Emma clung to her mother's hand until they wheeled her out, her knees buckling as the ambulance roared away. The room fell silent, the crackling fire the only sound. Emma sank to the floor, papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. Ava knelt beside her, tears streaking her makeup. I didn't know it was this bad, Emma. I swear. Emma didn't look at her, her voice hollow. You didn't want to know. Rob approached Mike, his tone icy. You've got $500,000 and you let it come to this? What the hell's wrong with you? Mike said nothing, his eyes darting to the door where Linda had vanished. Ethan checked his phone, his voice grim. Bank just called Uncle Rob. They're taking the house. Taxes weren't paid. It's gone. Emma closed her eyes, the weight of it crashing down. Bear Lake, Grandma Ellie's ring, her mother's life, all slipping through her fingers because Mike wouldn't touch Ava's precious fund. She'd exposed the truth, but at what cost? The ambulance's red lights faded into the distance as she whispered to herself, I've lost everything. But in that moment, something flickered in Mike's eyes. Fear, yes, but also a glint of something new. Respect? Regret? Emma couldn't tell. She didn't care. The family she'd fought for was a house of cards, and she'd just blown it down. Emma Walsh sat in the sterile waiting room of Salt Lake Regional Medical Center, her hands clasped tight around a styrofoam coffee cup gone cold. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, each second an eternity since her mother, Linda, had been rushed away on a stretcher, her frail body racked by a heart attack. The Bear Lake house was gone, foreclosed that afternoon, 24 hours after Emma's showdown with her father, Michael Walsh, had torn their family apart. She'd exposed his theft of her $25,000 savings, his hoarding of a $500,000 trust fund for her sister Ava, and the $118,745 she'd sacrificed over 5 years. But the cost was steep. Linda's life hung in the balance, and Emma's heart ached with every beep from the ICU. Her phone buzzed. Ethan Brooks. Emma. Linda's stable for now, he texted. They're keeping her overnight. You okay? She typed back a shaky, thanks, I'm here, then let the phone slip to her lap. Stable. The word felt fragile, like the last thread holding her to the family she'd once bled for. The waiting room door creaked open, and Ava stepped in. Her blonde hair tangled, eyes swollen from crying. Emma tensed, bracing for another fight. Ava had defended Mike's lies, wielded Grandma Ellie's ring like a guilt trip, but now she looked broken. Emma, Ava whispered, clutching a small velvet box. Can we talk? Emma nodded, too exhausted to argue. Ava sank into the chair beside her, staring at the floor. I went to the house after they took Mom, she said, her voice trembling. The bank locked it up. Everything's gone. Dad wouldn't use my trust fund, even when I begged him. He said it's my future, not his mess. She paused, swallowing hard. But it's not my future, Emma. It's yours. He built it with your money, your life. I didn't know how bad it was. Emma's throat tightened. You didn't know? Ava, you've been cashing checks I wrote for years. Car payments, vacations. How could you not see? Ava's tears spilled over, her hands twisting the box. I knew about the trust fund since I was 18, she admitted, her voice barely audible. Dad said it was my safety net because I wasn't smart like you. I didn't ask where it came from. I didn't want to. I was selfish, Emma, and I'm so sorry. The confession hit like a punch, but Emma saw the guilt in Ava's eyes, raw and real. You knew, Emma said slowly. And you let me carry it all. Ava nodded, sobbing. I hate myself for it. You were breaking your back and I just took. Before Emma could respond, Ava opened the box, revealing Grandma Ellie's ring. The gold band with its tiny sapphire glinting faintly under the fluorescent lights. I found this in Dad's safe, Ava said. He was going to sell it. I stopped him. It's yours, Emma. You deserve it more than anyone. She pressed it into Emma's hand, her fingers trembling. Emma stared at the ring, memories flooding back. Ellie's warm hands teaching her to cast a fishing line, her voice promising, You're tougher than they know. Tears welled up as she slipped it onto her finger, the weight of it grounding her. Thank you, she whispered, her voice cracking. Ava wiped her eyes. There's more. I went to the bank today, pulled $100,000 from the trust fund. It's paying Mom's hospital bills. Dad flipped out, but I don't care. It's the least I can do. Emma's breath caught. $100,000? Real action, not just words. You didn't have to, she said, but Ava shook her head. I did. I've been a leech, Emma. I want to fix this, starting now. For the first time, Emma saw her sister not as a rival, but as someone waking up from the same nightmare she'd escaped. The ICU door swung open and a nurse beckoned them. She's awake, he said. You can see her, but keep it short. Emma and Ava followed, stepping into the dim room where Linda lay, an oxygen mask fogging with each shallow breath. Her eyes fluttered open, locking onto Emma's. Honey, she rasped, reaching out a trembling hand. Emma took it, tears spilling down her cheeks. Mom, I'm here. Linda's grip tightened. I'm so sorry. I didn't know what he did. I should have stopped him. Her voice broke, and Emma leaned down, pressing her forehead to her mother's. It's okay, Mom. Just rest. Through the glass, Emma glimpsed Mike in the hall, his shoulders slumped, face haggard. He'd texted earlier, You killed this family. She hadn't replied. Now he met her gaze, then looked away, shame flickering in his eyes. Linda squeezed her hand again. I'm proud of you for standing up. I never did. The words pierced Emma's heart, a balm in a wound all at once. She sobbed quietly, the ring warm against her skin, a silent promise from Ellie that she'd survive this. Hours later, Emma left the hospital, the night air sharp against her tear-streaked face. Ava stayed with Linda, vowing to sort out the bills. Mike had vanished. Home, maybe? Or licking his wounds elsewhere? Emma drove west, away from Salt Lake, the mountains fading in her rear view. Her phone buzzed. A voicemail from Jim Carter, her financial advisor. Heard about the house, Emma. Let's rebuild your portfolio. Your future starts now. She smiled faintly, the first spark of hope in days. The radio crackled to life, a soft melody about new beginnings filling the car. Emma touched the ring, whispering, I'll build it again, Grandma. For me. The road stretched ahead, dark but open, and for the first time in years she felt unburdened. The family she'd known was ashes, but from it she'd rise.